Welcome to today's episode of the Simply Financial Podcast. I'm your host, Christopher Calandra. Would like to increase your financial IQ with today's episode, which includes a special guest, a returning guest, a good friend of mine, Dr. Kevin McGarry, who recently authored a book, which I read and loved. So I invited him on the show to talk a little bit about his book and leadership. And I think you'll find the conversation to be very valuable, not to put pressure on you, Kevin, but thanks for joining me today.
Chris, thanks for having me. I appreciate it, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk a little bit about the new book I just published.
So I've known you a long time, and this is your first book, becoming an author. So maybe you could just start with, you've had a successful business career, a lot of different experiences. And so I will admit on my bucket list is to write a book. I don't know if I'll ever write a book. So I'm curious, what was the inspiration for you at this time to write a book? The book, by the way, everybody that's listening, is Lead with Purpose by Dr. Kevin McGarry. So what was the inspiration that caused you to put in all the work to create such a great book?
The inspiration for writing the book really came down over the course of, probably the last couple of years as I was finalizing my doctorate in leadership. And the focus I had was to understand, how do you lead more effectively? But what I also realized after finalizing a doctorate, which is my thesis is maybe 550, 600 pages, that most people won't go and read my thesis. But there was so much, there was a lot of good insights within the thesis from leaders across various industries, from over 600 followers of people that have a leader. And I wanted to be able to get those insights out to individuals who are aspiring leaders, who are leaders today, or folks that happen to work for an organization where, they are being led by individuals. And how can I take the insights and bring them out to be really effective for the masses in a very easily readable and easily understood passage?
Yeah, it's very digestible. I've read a lot of business books, leadership books, self-help books, all of that stuff. Listeners of the show know I'm an avid reader, and I know we've swapped a lot of book ideas over the years too, your wife, Kristen, and I as well. But this is easily digestible. For example, if you're listening, my son, who's 18, recently left for college. He read this over the summer. And obviously he's not a CEO or some corporate powerhouse or even a manager at this point. So he liked the book, got a lot out of it. It is, I would use the term like very digestible. And it kind of reminded me form-wise of Who Moved My Cheese, which I know was a very influential book, but it seems like it's that same style. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, that's a fair assessment. And if you think about, kind of my history in my career, I've spent probably 5 days a week on a plane traveling across the country. And as you and I have talked about different books, for me, some of the books that I've really liked, Who Moved My Cheese, some of the John Gordon books of The Energy Bus, something you could pick up at, I live in Hartford, so pick it up at Bradley Airport. By the time I get to Atlanta, I can get through the book and get some of the main concepts to be able to incorporate into my life, whether it be business or personal. And so from the style, that's one of the reasons I kind of chose the style that I did, of something that's easily digestible, a quick read. You can get it done on a flight, and be able to pull away some key talking points and key insights that you as the reader can actually implement from a leadership standpoint, whether you're leading in your family, in your community, or in business.
That's very well said. And I am curious because I'm 53 and have, had what I deem a successful career. Who is the target market, you think, for this book? Like, I know it's for the mass market and it's pretty wide, but specifically, who do you think would be the ideal person to read this book?
So ideal is, age brackets may change, but I would say that 30 to 40s individual, someone who's in a leadership or an aspiring leadership opportunity. So relatively new leader, aspiring leader, or someone who's been, in leadership for, let's say, 5 to 10 years and wants to be able to reinvigorate their leadership style to be able to become more effective to those that they lead.
Yeah, that makes sense, right? So not that a CEO of a company or a founder of a successful company or even a struggling company wouldn't get value in the book, because I know I did. Um, but I think it's for somebody that needs to upgrade their skills, where they've had some success, where they're in a leadership position, either their own business or a corporate environment, and they're also struggling with all of the other pressures and priorities of life, most notably family, where they need to upgrade their skill set in order to get to where they want to go next. Is that a good summary?
It is. And I think some of the feedback I've gotten from folks that have read it are folks that are, in their early leadership years that said, oh my God, this is fantastic. It gives me a blueprint of everything I need to do to become a really effective leader. And so they gravitate towards literally all the key messages and key themes. As I talk to folks that are in their 50s, maybe later in their career, but have been in leadership, the feedback I've gotten is, oh my God, I like, these are the types of things that I implement today in my leadership. And what you did is you reminded me of 2 or 3 or 4 things that I need to do. I need to implement to become more effective. So it really depends on where you are career-wise of I really want to become an effective leader to I want to hone my skills and revisit maybe some of the things that someone might have known, or revisit new topics and conversations of how do you lead really effectively, and just add to someone's already effective leadership style.
So Kevin, you're an expert in leadership. You've had a career in leadership with management responsibilities, significant management responsibilities. And then you also pair that with the academic accomplishment of writing a doctorate thesis on leadership. It's pretty impressive. How would you describe, as expressed in the book, sort of like your leadership style? How would you summarize your leadership style and how you advance that in the book?
And so I think if you look at the style that I've kind of talked through in the book, it's the style of leadership that I implement today. It's about a people first approach to leadership, driven by my own individual character from a leadership standpoint, and effective communication. So those are kind of the 3 kind of key components of what drives my leadership style. But in at the top and most important is a people focused approach of how do you help develop talent to become the best that they can be at what they do, and how do you develop additional leaders? How do you create leaders and develop folks for their future in their career?
And is it simply putting in the effort to get to know them, what their goals are, what their fears are, what motivates them? I mean, is that really the essence of what you're talking about in that first principle?
In the first principle, it is. And it's interesting because in the research that I conducted through my doctorate, through what I experienced as a leader in corporate America for 20, 25 years, was that most individual employees are never asked, what do you want to do next? Where do you want to go in your career? And how can I help you as a leader be really effective at your current role? And then how do I help you get to wherever that is? Maybe it's within the company, maybe it's outside the company. How can I help you actually be better as an individual and as a leader into the future? And so that, to your point, it's about asking questions, sitting down and having specific time with employees and with folks on your team to say, get to know them on a personal level. What are their fears? What are their challenges? What are they looking to do? And then how can you, as a leader, remove obstacles and help them be successful in that endeavor?
So I like to hear that, because I have not led big teams, and I certainly do not have the leadership background that you have. But I was very fond of with my team is just talking about, let's say, you are part of my team. I would be like, Kevin, what do you like doing best? You have a lot of different roles and tasks. What do you like doing best? And then they tell you. And then, what do you like doing the least? I know you probably do it for the good of the team, and not everybody likes everything they do, but what do you like the least? Because then if you know what they like more and what they like less, sometimes you could shift stuff around to give them more what they like, and then somebody else might want the other part. So I found that to be very effective. That sounds consistent with what you're talking about. And that's not to pat myself on the back, because I have not led teams like you have, or others that are listening have. But I use that technique that's works, right?
Yeah, it does. And I think it's to your point, right? Whether you lead a small team or a really large team, it's important. And that goes from a corporate space to even from a personal, whether you're leading in your community or in your family, it's understanding what those others on your team, what do they like to do? What do they want to do into the future? And how can you help them be successful?
Good. And this leadership style that you have, the three, I call them principles. You didn't use that term. I'm assigning that to it. Is how has that changed over the 25 years of real life experience combined with this academic research?
It's changed quite a bit. And I think especially in financial services, a lot of leaders in financial services become leaders because they're really good performers. And if you're a strong performer, you become a leader. And what I struggled with in my first leadership role was I was successful doing and accomplishing the sales goals in one manner or one facet. And then I just expected my team to do it the same way that I did it. Um, and the reality is, and over time, you kind of learn this, that you want to get from point A to point B, but your way to get from point A to point B isn't always the right path. And that those on your team might have a more efficient way to get there, might have a different way to get there. They might be able to get from point A to point C because they're, super efficient. And how do you actually help them and understand what they're doing by reinforcing uh, how they actually execute in their roles and providing the resources and the tools for them to be successful. And so a lot of my evolution as a leader was to say, here's what I did, do it the way I did it, to let's bring it back and understand where people are and how do you help them be successful in who they are and where they want to go from a career and a personal standpoint.
That makes sense. It seems like in your description, and I've observed this too, is that if you're a very good salesperson, I think that's the illustration you gave,
Yeah.
that doesn't mean you would necessarily be a good sales manager. That goes back to what I said a moment ago, that you would need to incorporate some other skills. And your book is centered on, I don't know, has a lot of youth sports woven into the storyline. And I think about it like a great basketball player or a great football player. They often aren't great coaches, but it sort of makes sense to me under the construct that you're talking about, because it probably is hard for a great wide receiver to teach someone to do something that comes very natural to them. And it might be hard for them to try and articulate that to someone else. That's not to say an athlete doesn't put in tremendous amount of work in their craft and stuff like that. But, some of the best coaches was like the backup quarterback
Mm-hmm.
or a college player at a mid-level program. You don't see Hall of Fame players become coaches. And I just think in my worldview, that kind of highlights that it requires a different skill set.
It does require a different skill set, but it also requires a different focus. And as I've promoted and brought top performing and strong sales leaders into leadership, it's that analogy of, as a top performer, the spotlight's on you. It's all about you, your accomplishments. And as a leader, you have to turn that spotlight down to your team and highlight the accomplishments of your team. And not everyone's built that way. Some folks would like that spotlight on themselves more so than just shining on somebody else. And so being able to really understand who you are as an individual and should you be a leader. I've talked to a lot of folks and talked them out of leadership opportunities because it wasn't right for them at the
That's
time
right.
or wasn't right for them personally. but they didn't have the passion in developing others. They had a passion to develop themselves to be the best. But as a leader, you really truly have to be, selfless. And, how do you provide the value to be able to recognize and provide opportunities for other people to shine versus yourself?
So let's pivot a little bit, because one of the things we haven't shared, or I haven't shared with the listener, is that the book is about leadership, but it's also about balancing family life and work life, and using these leadership tools not just in the business setting, but also as a parent. And I think the book is less so about spouse, but I think that probably holds true too. Can you talk a little bit about that part of the book and how it relates to your leadership views?
Sure. The book itself is just for the listeners. Eddie's the main character, and the main character in the book is a sales executive in the aerospace industry who is struggling as a leader, struggling to hit sales goals. And at home, he's got some struggling a little bit with his spouse, struggling a little bit with his daughter as well. But in the beginning of the book is asked to coach a softball team for his daughter. And so it really looks at how do we, and Eddie becomes an assistant softball coach to be able to look at how do you develop a team, a softball team, and develop your leaders at work. But throughout the entire story, it talks about building that relationship with family as well, and understanding. We go back to that people first approach. Through the book, one of the stories is about Riley, the daughter, where she begins to set personal goals and looking at how do you kind of bring some of these leadership concepts of what's your vision for the future? Where do you want to go for your kids, right? Like your son just went to FSC. How do you kind of set that goal 5, 6, 7 years earlier so they have somewhere that they're trying to accomplish to get to? And as a parent, how can you help them accomplish their goal, whatever it may be, playing sports at the collegiate level or in high school, and then trying to overcome some of the obstacles that we all face as parents and kind of raising kids.
Yeah, you pointed out my son recently left for school, and he's an athlete, but you don't need to be an athlete for this illustration to be important. Is that, like, he has a goal athletically, and he's a freshman, right? So it's not to be the MVP or, basically he wants to dress for games. I mean, that's his goal, and that's a good freshman goal, I think. I don't know, maybe that'll proven to be wrong. But then he also has some, academic goals. And I think as a father in the household, as a parent in the household, to walk them through this process of, like you described, managing them. There's a lot of roles you have as a parent, but it seems one of the key ones is management and the principles you laid forth about getting to know them. And one of my favorite stories on this is I have a good friend, and he has 3 sons, and he's a big sports guy, a massive sports guy. And his 2 younger sons are big time athletes, but his oldest son isn't. Turns out his older son was interested in music, and this father took music lessons with his son. It's not what he would do left to his own devices. But he found out what did interest his son, and he connected with his son, and they had a shared experience. Not that he's a good musician, because he's not. But I think that's good management, and that's good being a good father, but they're very much related, no?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think that they're very much related, and the opportunity to help, whether it's an employee or a child, to say what's truly possible, and that is a leader to open up their eyes of your kids or those on your team to say, where can you go? Because if it's your son wants to dress for games, well, that's he now sees that possible, but maybe in the first month of practice, he's going to realize maybe it's about playing on the varsity squad, right? Like playing some collegiate level games and being able to not only dress but play. And so how do you open up and be able to push your kids, push your employees to say what that level is? Maybe it's an AVP level, maybe it's VP, maybe it is an opportunity for someone to start a business and be able to create more than they really thought possible because they just didn't have the vision to see there. And as a parent, as a leader, we sometimes we can actually see further ahead than those that we lead. And that ability, I think, is really important for us to put out there and to push people beyond beyond their limits.
Yeah. And the work-life balance, which I don't really love that cliche, but the idea that you have these priorities that you have to juggle, especially if you want to be successful in the business world, that does require time, effort, mental mind share. There's a lot that goes into being successful. It's not easy. And I'm not even talking about successful where you become a billionaire. I'm just talking about, successful where you climb the corporate ladder, where you make more money and you build wealth and you have successful outcomes in your business projects. And then you have being a good parent. And then for many people, being a good spouse, a good partner. Talk to me about balancing those out, which you talk about in the book, I think, and you do a good job communicating that because the person seems to, because of this new approach, Eddie, your main character, is able to have success in both realms by sort of adjusting and adopting some new techniques, leadership techniques. So can you talk a little bit about that work-life balance? Again, I don't like that term.
Yeah.
And just trying to get it so that you could be successful at home as well as successful in the workplace.
And through the book, and to your point, which is I share a story where Eddie, the main character, is struggling because he has a major business meeting on the same exact day as the state championship for for softball. And so
Youth softball.
for youth softball, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And so it's that family dynamic of his daughter's softball team versus his own business experience of where does he need to be from a business standpoint. And the concept of building leaders who are very successful can build opportunities for other leaders and provide others that opportunity to be successful. And so through the book and through the story, Eddie provides this opportunity for one of his associates to take on and be able to take the business meeting. And so he'd been working with mentoring Jennifer on through on his team to be able to have all the skills, all the approach appropriate to be able to win the business meeting. And so it becomes that trust. As a leader, do you trust your team? Have you developed your team so that they can take on bigger roles and responsibilities? And that could give you that opportunity to do another meeting, right? So to be able to amplify your success at work,
Big
or
time.
to be able to spend time where you need to because you have, in this situation, Eddie has a state championship game for his daughter and wants to be able to balance and be able to accomplish both things, both personally and professionally in a very effective way. And through leadership and through developing people, developing talent, and giving his individuals the opportunity to excel at what they do, which is where he's able to actually win an automotive deal because he actually is in essence in two places at once. He's got one of his associates at the business meeting, and he's on the softball diamond and winning at the softball team as well.
I love it. Last thing I want to touch on is Eddie has sort of a mentor or coach or confidant guru that helps him on this journey during the book. And I think it's a great literary device because it helps you pull together your storyline as an English, as an English major. I appreciate how you did that. But real life, how does how does someone who reads this book and wants to improve their skill set, be a better leader, both at home and perhaps on the home front, how do they find a coach? How would you describe, forgive me, I forget his name, but Eddie's
Mark Turner.
Mark Turner. How do you find someone like Mark that could help you along the way? I imagine sometimes it's within corporate America, right? A manager could go to their manager to try and get help, but that seems to me, not having been a corporate guy, probably happens less than you would think. So tell me where someone finds someone that could help them other than the book, which is a big help. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. So finding a mentor is really kind of the essence of that question. How do you find someone that can help navigate you through your career, or help through some of the difficult conversations? One of which is, I'm a business coach, so I could help you. But then two, outside of reading the book and being able to find opportunities within literature through whether business and coaching, it then becomes this real challenge that so many across corporate America face, which is, where do you go to find the right mentor? And through, my individual career, through talking to individuals, the more senior individuals are, the more willing that they are to give back. And so
Yeah.
folks near the end of their career really do want to help, but they also need to be asked. And so being able to look, whether it's in your company or in your industry, where you see other folks that impress you at a conference, have a conversation through LinkedIn, just reach out and say, let's have a conversation. Love to learn a little bit more about how successful you've been. And you'd be surprised how many folks will actually reach back out and say, let's have that 15-minute, 20-minute, 30-minute conversation that leads into a friendship, that leads into mentorship and learning about how to be a little bit better leader and navigating some of the challenges that others have already experienced and can help you and help guide you through that process.
Very good. So Dr. Kevin McGarry, his first book, a terrific one, Lead with Purpose. It's available pretty much on any platform, right? I purchased mine on Amazon because you didn't give me one. I don't know why, but I'm a paying customer. And anyone who is listening, if you want me to get you a copy, I'll get you a copy of the book. Go to the website, elliottwealth.com, and there's a place where you could sign up for a consultation. In there, if you send us a message and ask for the book, we'll reach out to you and we'll find a way to get you Kevin's book, but it's not a terribly expensive book. I don't know what's in most places, how much, Kevin,
And
roughly?
on Amazon, it's about $19.
Yeah, so there you go. So you don't necessarily need me, but if you want, go to elliottwealth.com. You could do a complimentary consultation. Just ping us and we'll get you a copy of the book. Thanks everyone for listening today. I hope you found the information, the conversation to be valuable. Kevin, I appreciate your time and your friendship, and I will be back with everyone on the next episode of the Simply Financial Podcast very soon.
The views expressed are not necessarily the opinion of Osaic Wealth, Inc., and should not be construed directly or indirectly as an offer to buy or sell any securities mentioned herein. Investing is subject to risks, including loss of principal invested. Past performance is not a guarantee of future results. No strategy can assure a profit nor protect against loss. Please note that individual situations can vary. Therefore, the information should be relied upon when coordinated with individual professional advice. Please note, the information being provided is strictly as a courtesy. When you link to any of the websites provided here, you are leaving this website. We make no representation as to the completeness or accuracy of information provided at these websites. Nor is the company liable for any direct or indirect technical or system issues or any consequences arising out of your access to or your use of third-party technologies, websites, information, and programs made available through this website. When you access one of these websites, you are leaving our website and assume total responsibility and risk for your use of the websites you are linking to. Securities and advisory services are offered through Osaic Wealth, Inc., member FINRA, SIPC, insurance services offered through Elliott Wealth Management Services, LLC, not affiliated with Osaic Wealth, Inc.